What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for Detroit. Based on the 1967 multi-day riots in Detroit, Michigan, where police were at odds with mostly African Americans, the plot is centered on the Algiers motel incident, where police responded to supposed gunshots being fired in that same area and resulted in the deaths of 3 individuals and the beatings of 9 other people. Going into this movie, I had quite a bit of interest with it regarding its subject matter and the director at the helm of this picture. With this event in particular, of course I have learned about the American Civil Rights Movement that took place during the 1960s, but never on the specific event in particular with the Detroit riots. With the director at hand here, this movie is directed by Kathryn Bigelow, who of course is known as the first female director to win the Best Director Oscar for The Hurt Locker, and that movie subsequently also won Best Picture. Regarding The Hurt Locker and some other of Bigelow's movies that I have seen, I do like The Hurt Locker, yet I find it overrated in retrospect. Aside from the great performances and the tension-filled bomb-diffusing scenes in that movie, I found every other scene in between to be pretty boring. With Zero Dark 30 that came after that, I enjoyed that film more than The Hurt Locker, just on the basis of it having a more intriguing plot on my end. To be honest, of Bigelow's movies that I have seen, my favorite of hers is the original Point Break film, starring Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, which I actually didn't even know she directed that film until a year or two ago, and I find that movie to be a modern action classic. Now Bigelow has tackled another subject matter based on true events, and just like Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker as well, I found the performances in Detroit to be effective across the board. There's just a lot of people to name here within this ensemble cast. It was much bigger than I initially expected going in. Of course, major players in this movie include John Boyega, who does an outstanding job as this part-time security guard who gets roped into all of this. Will Poulter, the crooked cop who is leading the raid on the Algiers motel. To me, Poulter was a real standout here for how amazingly unlikable this guy is. He was also just super chilling in his performance. The other standout in this movie is Algie Smith. I believe I'm pronouncing his first name right. He plays a member of a Motown music group. He can sing pretty well, by the way, who unfortunately gets wrapped up in all this, and I think that he is the heart of the movie, even when his character gets really disheartened as this really untimely event progresses within the movie's narrative. There's also Jacob Lattimore, Jason Mitchell, Hannah Murray, Caitlin Dever, Jack Rayner, Ben O'Toole. Rayner and O'Toole play 2 more crooked cops. John Krasinski as an attorney who is involved with the 3 cops' trial. Anthony Mackie, who's previously been in Bigelow's The Hurt Locker. There's just a lot of people here, like I've said before, and everyone, no matter what role they are assigned to, they just all do superb jobs. The writing in this movie was engaging to me from the start, along with Bigelow's direction. Mark Boal penned the script for this movie, and he's previously won an Academy Award for writing The Hurt Locker. But with Detroit in particular, setting up another movie that is based on factual events, just like he also previously wrote with Zero Dark 30, was very interesting from the start, especially since the movie began with an animation of sorts that was explaining African American history and how it gets roped into the Detroit riots of 1967. That was a pretty unique choice to have this different kind of animation be used to explain some things, and I know that's going to throw some people off and not be fitting, but I'm a history nut, so whenever history can be incorporated and incorporated well, that's what gets to me. From the onset, after the animation sequence that started this film, we see what I assume did start the riots that took place in Detroit in 1967, where the police raided an unlicensed bar slash club full of African Americans, and that caused a lot of ruckuses throughout this city. And we also don't get a central main character for a little while in this movie too. Yeah, despite this movie having a notable ensemble cast, there really isn't a main character to follow in this film. We do jump back and forth between specific subplots of the movie, like when we get introduced to John Boyega's character and all other characters played by actors I've previously mentioned here. But what I got from what the filmmakers were intending to put on screen was that the actual event of the Detroit riots, specifically when we got to the Algiers motel incident, is the main character of this film. Kind of reminded me of what Christopher Nolan did with Dunkirk in having the rescue mission that took place at Dunkirk, France being the main focus of the film. Just like Dunkirk 2, what Detroit is also able to do so well is incite intensity throughout. Unlike Dunkirk though, where that movie started off immediately with a bang, Detroit slowly eases us into what happened at the Algiers that fateful night. And this is a testament to what Bigelow was able to do directing-wise, because it all came off as so realistic, not just for how frightening the whole event was. Just from the characters interacting with each other was already realistic enough, but just looking at how the movie was filmed, a lot of handheld cinematography is used in this movie, but it is used really well to get us to feel how uneasy the situation is for everybody involved here. Also with how it occasionally zooms in on people's faces to get us seeing the emotions that are shown. And just what we got from the back and forths between the police and the victims who were involved just really left me stoked in the best way possible, but also spooked at the same time too, because I don't want to entirely say I was enjoying what I was seeing on screen, but it was just so masterfully directed that I didn't mind being suckered in while disturbing stuff was happening. That sequence at the motel does last a good middle chunk of the movie too, and it is not up until the last third or quarter of the movie where it focuses in on the repercussions of that event, where the victims who got out alive testified against the police who were involved. Now, even though I said at the beginning of this review that this narrative does involve casualties, of course I'm not giving away who does get out alive or not, but the reason I brought up this movie having casualties and other repercussions being associated with this real life event is because it's where the movie gets into its social commentary of sorts, where parallels that are kind of like what are happening in today's time period with racial segregation and other prejudices being very high are indicative to why this movie is being told in the first place. To my surprise too, the movie didn't come off as pretentious or preachy for what it was trying to say too. It was just trying to be as honest of a portrayal of the Detroit riots, specifically the Algiers incident once again, as honest as possible to try and get us to really see this event, because apparently it wasn't as well told as it was before until now. This movie is lengthy. At about 2 hours and 20 minutes, I thought the pacing was actually really well done for the most part. I did not feel the running time at all because I was suckered into what was happening on screen. Other technical merits I have to praise here are the costumes with the movie. They looked pretty authentic to coming from the late 1960s. The production design with interiors looking very either lived in or really worn down. Same thing with the exteriors and a lot of things getting destroyed. The music is very good too. Really, the issues I have with this movie are few and far between now that I think about this film more and more. I guess I could say that the pacing did rear its ugly head towards the trial sequences, as we had just come off of seeing a lot of disturbing imagery with the Algiers sequence not long before the trial does begin, but also with those images being shown off in the movie with a lot of people getting bruised up and having blood all over them, that's going to be something that's going to turn off some people with this film. I saw this movie with a friend, and he noticed some people walk out of this movie and never come back, and now that I had remembered it too, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, the touchy subject matter here is going to be tough for some people to get over, and it's going to get them riled up and angry about it. I myself am a minority, but I was personally more interested in the events that were unfolding. All in all, I do think that Detroit is something that people should see at least once so they get informed of what happened during the late 1960s in Detroit, because I certainly did not know that much about this movie and the subject matter that it was covering until I saw this movie by the end. Just all of what is associated with this movie coming together, I think, is fantastically well done. I think this is probably my favorite Kathryn Bigelow movie of recent memory. Once again, some people are going to be put off by the subject matter of this film and what it does talk about, but to me, film is able to affect us emotionally in more ways than one. Just like if we were able to get a visceral reaction from seeing something like this, or act physically and becoming better people, or getting informed more on the topic like this. That's what I got out of this movie for sure. And just all the filmmaking here and how so excellently this movie is put together is why it's one of my favorite movies of 2017 thus far. I highly recommend it. My final verdict for Detroit is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Detroit, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.